Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Unstoppable podcast. I'm your host, Diana Chen, and I'm here today with a very special guest. I've got Landon Cassill with me. He is a NASCAR driver and an early crypto adopter and miner. So I'm super excited to talk to him about his background in racing, but also how he got into crypto. And he's been in it since almost the very beginning, and he's even mined some crypto. So how does a race car driver also is a Bitcoin miner, how does that work? We're going to talk to him all about that. So welcome, Landon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Diana. I'm happy to be on the show.
Awesome. So I want to start with your background as a race car driver before we get into the crypto stuff. I know you've been sort of driving, quote unquote, driving and racing since you were a little kid, probably just a few years old. So take us all the way back to when you first started driving and racing, and how did you get into this and become a NASCAR driver?
Uh, you're absolutely right. I've been driving my whole life and always loved racing and been into it. My family's in the car business, so cars are very, just part of our family and part of our culture, I guess you could say. And um, always wanted to be a race car driver. So started out in go-karts and worked my way up into full-size cars as a teenager. But by the time I was 17, I got hired to be Jimmy Johnson's test driver at Hendrick Motorsports and was driving full-on NASCAR race cars and doing it for a living straight out of high school. And made my first NASCAR start in the Busch Series in 2007 and have really navigated my way through the sport ever since.
Awesome. And you'll have to forgive me for my lack of racing knowledge, but for others who are maybe wondering the same thing, what made you choose NASCAR as opposed to like Formula One or IndyCar? And like, what's like the main difference between NASCAR and the other big ones that people may have heard of out there?
That's a great question. And as far as a driver's path, um, where you end up has a lot to do with where you came from. I came from racing short tracks in the Midwest. I'm an Iowa kid, and that sort of background lends you towards the NASCAR direction, either IndyCar or NASCAR. And also, NASCAR is and was at the time the premier motorsports in the country. It's bigger than IndyCar. Obviously the Indy 500 is a huge event and a great race. But my heart was always towards NASCAR. So when you grow up racing short tracks, ovals, stock cars, that's where that discipline sends you the NASCAR direction. To go Formula One racing, it's very international. At a young age, I could have focused more on road racing and tracks with left and right hand turns, maybe gone to Europe and raced in Europe. It was actually something that we looked at doing, was sending me off to Europe and spending the summer racing out there. We didn't end up doing it, and I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad that I went the path that I did and raced NASCAR. But that's sort of the path for a Formula One driver. And ultimately, the difference between the two sports, there's a ton of differences. I mean, the cars are completely different. The way that the teams operate is very different. Even though they're both motorsport, they're two different disciplines of motorsport. So it's almost like comparing American football to rugby. Very similar sports, and the same athletes could probably play and have, their skills could easily cross over, but the discipline is different. And so there's things that Formula One drivers would have a hard time learning in a NASCAR race, and vice versa.
Gotcha. And you mentioned a few things there, short track as opposed to, I guess, long track. What does that
Right.
mean?
Yeah, short track, long track, that's pretty simple. In the sport, maybe we call it short track, speedway, super speedway. A short track is a track that's under a mile in length. So if you know anything about NASCAR and you've heard of Martinsville or Bristol, those are short tracks, and those are the tiniest small racetracks where the cars are beating and banging, the drivers are leaning on each other, the cars get used up, and they get a lot of dents on their fenders, and usually there's a good fight or something like that at the track as well. That's a short track. And most grassroots racing, drivers growing up, local races, even if you know nothing about racing, no matter where you live, if you search for your local short track, there's probably a grassroots local short track within 50 miles of where you live. and you could go watch a race on a Friday or Saturday night. Those people out there racing, those are my people. That's that's where I grew up racing, and I probably raced at wherever you live. I probably raced at a track that's near you. And when you get up to NASCAR, the tracks get bigger and faster. We still in NASCAR, we still race on short tracks, probably 8 to 10 times a year. And they're huge stadiums, and they hold hundreds of thousands of people. But most of our schedule is made up of super speedways or speedways, and those are tracks that are a mile and a half to 2 miles. In fact, we race at Daytona International Speedway, it's a 2.5 mile racetrack, and these are giant facilities, hold a couple 100,000 people, and the cars go 200 miles an hour.
And then is there like a set length for NASCAR races? Like how many laps around this track do you go?
It really just depends on the racing series. The NASCAR Cup Series races up to 500 miles. Actually, 600 miles. The longest race of the season is the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. The Daytona 500 is a 500-mile race. In the Xfinity Series, which is the next series down, the races are anywhere from 250 to 300 miles.
Okay, so a 600-mile race. How long are you sitting in the car for?
That race takes about 4.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And our cars
Oh
are
my
really
gosh, yeah.
hot too. It's been the cars have been getting hotter and hotter over the past couple years, and it's interior of our car is anywhere from 120 to 140 degrees in the summertime when it's really hot out. So
So
it gets to be.
how do you survive in there for 4 hours?
It's a lot of you have to hydrate, you have to be in shape. I have a nutrition plan over the course of an entire race. My preferred form of training for physical training for the car is long distance endurance training. I feel like it's very similar to what we go through in the car. So like marathon running, Ironman training, that's actually what I like to do outside of the car. And I have a nutrition plan for both of them that's about the same. So I take about 300 calories per hour in the car, and that's with about 20 ounces, 20 to 30 ounces of fluids per hour with those 300 calories in the car.
So are you like driving and snacking in the car, or do you have like an IV hooked up to you, or how do you get nutrition while you're driving?
It's all through a bottle. Really the same way like a cyclist would in the Tour de France. Um, I take it all through a bottle, and it's all mixed into the bottle, and that's where I get all my carbs and calories.
Gotcha, incredible. And then, oh, the other thing I was going to ask you about is the stock cars. So, stock car racing is different from, I guess, I don't know what the word for a
Open wheel.
non-stock car, open wheel racing,
Yep.
because it isn't stock car the one that gets a little more physical and aggressive, where you can sort of like bumper car each other a little bit.
Yeah, it is, and that's where I come from. I'm a stock car driver. We're just a little bit more rough around the edges. We're a little more physical with the cars. Stock car racing doesn't have very strict uh, policies on driver aggression. So you can and I'm using racing terms a little bit, but you can use someone up in a stock car. You can lean against them, bump them out of the way. I mean, you can even crash somebody. It's there's certain levels of blatancy that NASCAR, if you go over the line and put someone in danger, intentionally, NASCAR will step in that way. But for the most part, if you've ever watched Days of Thunder, Rubbin's Racing, and that's sort of the mantra for stock car racing. In open wheel racing, it's a lot different because the cars aren't protected by fenders. They're not protected by a lot of body work. And you if you bounce tires with another driver in open wheel racing, it can be incredibly dangerous. So that racing culture has a lot more regulation around driver aggression and how the drivers are allowed to race against each other on the track. But in stock car racing, it's kind of a free for all.
Yeah, so what's your strategy with, like bumping people off the track and stuff? Because I'm sure like you have to weigh in your head, like I could bump them off a little bit and get ahead, but like there's a fine line between doing that and potentially causing like a really bad crash, right?
Yeah, you have to be smart with your aggression. You have to protect your own car, and B, you have to know who you're going to be aggressive with, and what the ramifications of that could be. In our sport, we race against the same drivers every single week, 36 weeks a year. So you can go run some guy over and hit him out of the way if you want, but the very next week he might be coming right back for you. So it's very indicative of life, and it's very self-policing. And NASCAR drivers generally do a pretty good job of it. I mean, it's NASCAR is very hands off on aggression with drivers. They let us handle it amongst ourselves. They step in from time to time when things get egregious, but at the end of the day, I don't wreck someone or knock someone out of the way unless I'm willing to pay the price on the other end.
Yeah, wow. Lots of like game theory there and strategy with,
Oh, for
just like
sure.
who you're yeah, fascinating. Okay, last quick question about driving and then we'll get into crypto. So I know that you're being sponsored right now by Voyager. Can you talk a little bit more about Voyager, what that is for people who aren't familiar? And then how do sponsorships work in NASCAR? Do you get approached by a bunch of different brands and then you decide, or do you go and like reach out to brands? Like, how does that whole process work?
It's a lot of both. NASCAR is at its core, racing is awesome, and everybody loves the purest form of their sport. But it's a marketing business. I mean, we have tens of millions of fans in NASCAR, and we have millions of people that watch every single week live on TV. I mean, we're on broadcast television every single week. So it's a huge platform for brands and entire segments to promote their products. And so we get approached by potential sponsors. We also reach out to a lot of potential sponsors. And for me, Voyager is one that is just aligned with me personally, that I reached out to and built a relationship with Steve Ehrlich, the CEO, a couple years ago. And being in crypto, Voyager is a brokerage platform, a crypto brokerage platform. We just built a relationship, and you know wanted to find a way for us to succeed together, and we kicked that off this June with a sponsorship on my race car from June, basically the entire second half of the racing season. Like I said, so Voyager, if you haven't heard of the app or the community, it's a crypto brokerage platform. You can download it on your smartphone. You can sign up and link your account and buy crypto right there. And they have over 60 different um, cryptocurrencies that you can buy and trade on their platform, but they also pay really good interest rates on their platform as well. So if you hold USDC, they pay 9% on that. They pay, I think, almost 6% on Bitcoin. So they have a really, really good interest program, and then they have a loyalty program as well through their native token, which is the Voyager token. So it's a really good organic partnership that makes the car looks great because it's a beautiful royal blue, purplish color. The car stands out, and we do a lot of cool stuff together on social media as well.
Yeah, I've seen the car. It looks super cool. I love the colors as well. Very cool. All right, so I want to dive into your crypto journey. So I know that you got into Bitcoin back in like 2013 or something super early like that, and you actually started mining Bitcoin. But I don't know the story of like how you heard about crypto in the first place and what was it that caught your attention. So take us all the way back.
Yeah, I have a lot of interesting early crypto stories. It didn't click for me all of a sudden. And but around 2013 was when I first heard of it. What's funny enough, and I tell this story at some point. My brother's going to ask me to stop telling this story, but I know that my brother was using Bitcoin back in those days. But I always say that I don't know what he was using it for, and I'd
I
rather
think
not
I
know.
think we can. I think our listeners can probably take a good guess.
Yeah. So I knew what Bitcoin was. I knew that there was this, magic internet money aspect to Bitcoin. It didn't really click for me until about 2014 when a good friend of mine, Josh Wise, um, got sponsored by the Dogecoin community from the Dogecoin Reddit. And they didn't pay in Dogecoin, but the community raised the funds themselves and then liquidated it and paid the sponsorship to get Dogecoin on his race car. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, this I'm going to pay attention to this and figure out what's going on here. And I started exploring like what can you do with this? What does Bitcoin mean? What does Dogecoin mean? Um, and that's when I really started to try to understand it. But I kind of became all in on crypto to the point that I was like, I want to learn this space. And so it was not long after that that I started mining it, and got to the point where I mined several different cryptos, but had a fairly modest mining farm that I operated for about 2 years, over 2 years, and still hold every coin that I mined, and plan on holding them for a long time. And which is something funny that my wife and I always talk about because she's just like, you should sell some of it. But when I tell her it's like generational or that I want to hold it for a long time, she always kind of rolls her eyes at me. But I've bought it, I've traded it, I've mined it. Um, One of the aha moments that I always comment on with my wife was, literally this year in May when Bitcoin hit 60,000. My wife said, I wish you would have bought more, which is like, I feel like it's a very like tagline for Bitcoin, for people that have loved ones or close family members that have followed them, and through their journeys, to finally say like, I wish you would have bought more, because my wife has always been skeptical or like, what are you doing? Or should we really be putting this much money into it? So that was kind of like a an aha moment, I guess. But a couple years ago, I really set out. I had seen what crypto had done for my personal portfolio, and I was very interested and invested in it personally. But in 2018, I really wanted to take it to the next level in terms of my professional career. So I started really, focusing on networking in this space, and that's when I met Steve Ehrlich from Voyager, within 2019, and we just had stayed in touch ever since then. I've met several other people from the space, and sort of built these relationships and these friendships, that are all crypto endemic, because I wanted this to be part of my professional career, and be on my race car.
Yeah, 100%. So, I'm curious too, like, are a lot of people in the racing community into crypto, or are you sort of a lone wolf?
There's a lot of them there's some drivers that are into it. I don't know to what degree. I mean, I don't think there's any that are really as into it as I am, but I know that there's some drivers that bought it, they trade it, they ask me questions about it. I've helped people get set up on the Voyager platform. I will say that there's engineers that have messaged me that I've worked with on teams that have messaged me and said, "Hey, I've been mining crypto, or I mine Ethereum," or which is funny. It's very engineering thing. That's kind of funny that I get those messages.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you explain crypto to like your teammates or your competitors or your crew or anybody in your community that is like, "Yo, I know you're like the crypto dude. What is this?"
um, Man, I don't know. I mean, it just depends on the level of someone that I'm talking to and what it seems like they're interested. Um, I I try to, keep it as simple as possible for some people and just explain, um, maybe I enjoy explaining the idea of digital asset, and it doesn't have to be money, right? It's just like the fact that what Satoshi invented was this ability to trade something or to transact something digitally that can't be copied, it can't be duplicated, it can't be controlled. I think that's really cool. That's so paramount to the entire space. So I just had this conversation with someone that was very surface level that had no understanding and said, "What is this cryptocurrency thing? I don't get it." And instead of trying to explain even the scarcity aspect or the investment aspect, it was just like, "Look, this is the problem that Bitcoin solved. All of these other technologies and all these other cryptocurrencies after that are taking that technology and adding to it or complementing it. But I do think I do like starting there when I'm talking to somebody is just saying, hey, you and I can exchange something in person right now, and nobody can stop us from doing it. But how would you do that something like that digitally?
Yeah, for sure. I think I mean, for me too, it was really that same concept you're talking about, like the decentralization that leads to autonomy that like really spoke to me. It wasn't, the financial investment aspect or anything like that. So, yeah, I am totally with you on that. I think that's a very compelling argument or use case for crypto. Another thing I'm wondering too is like, so okay, you started out mining Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies, and then as you've sort of like as the space has evolved over time, and then you've been in the space for so long, what aspects of crypto are you most interested in today? What is it, like DeFi, NFTs, DAOs? Like, what is like top of mind for you nowadays?
In a bull market, which I would say that we're in a bull market right now. In a bull market, I get interested in all of it, right? So NFTs. I'm more interested in NFTs now than over the past year, right? Just because the market's great and things are all over the place. So now you're starting to look at these other projects. I think DeFi is really cool. I tiptoe around DeFi an awful lot, because there's so it is kind of the Wild West. I mean, if crypto itself wasn't the Wild West, DeFi really feels like it's the Wild West. So I'm really interested in DeFi, even though I tiptoe around it, and I don't know if I articulate it very well yet, or I don't know if I understand a lot of DeFi very well. Um, but but I also I'm really into the coins that I'm holding, and I'm into earning interest on them, on Voyager. I mean, I know that sounds like an advertisement, but I think it's incredible how I can have money in my bank account and earn nothing on it, right? And in fact, the dollar's inflating like crazy right now, and I'm not getting any interest on my money by lending it to the bank, and letting the bank take it and lend it out. But I can put money on a platform like Voyager and earn incredible interest because Voyager is passing that through to me. So I'm really into that right now as well. But yeah, I would say between just my core token holdings and DeFi and NFT, those are probably where I'm the most interested.
Yeah, for sure. You don't have to answer this, but what coins are you holding right now that you're most excited about? I'm sure people will want to know.
Yeah, I'm super careful. I definitely don't like giving it, or I can't give advice. I don't want to give it financial advice. Because I've been in the space so long, Bitcoin is a very important part of my crypto portfolio. Voyager token is also one. I'm very interested in the community tokens that have really taken off this year, because I like that. You take okay, so we for years and years we've been going to Starbucks and buying coffee, right? And you earn points, and you can use those points for things. I think it's really cool how this cryptocurrency is now allowing that model to really return not just loyalty points that you can use, but like real equity, things that can generate wealth. And that's what a token like the Voyager token can do for you. If you're on the Voyager platform and you're trading, you can get discounts on your trading. You can get interest on the token. I think StormX is another really good example of that, for you if you're shopping a lot. So those are projects that I'm very interested in, and it seemed cool to me. Um, there's the NFT stuff is kind of cool. Like I've got a couple NFTs that I own, that I get like the non-fungible token. I get it, right? I'm a crypto guy. I get it. I'm still working through my mind the whole like owning a JPEG. I'm trying to dumb it down to the meme itself, right? And the scarcity in that, but like I love these projects. I love the communities that they generate, because any one of those projects like Badass Bulls that I own a couple NFTs in there. Any one of these projects that has a really good organized and energetic community, you just know that there's something good that can come out of that. And that's, even if you're not convinced of owning a JPEG or something like that, um, I think that you have to have an open mind that, hey, if there's 1,000 people that are invested in this project and are willing to reinvest in it, or willing to, collectively go from whatever direction they want to go, there's a lot of leverage in the market with that, and those are things that are worth investing in to me. So I also, I think there's some pretty cool artists out there. One that I like to keep an eye on is a very young artist named Fewocious. Uh, so I've been watching their work, and there's a really cool collection of Fewocious pieces on the Unically platform that's now we're getting like deep into the depths of crypto and NFTs. But Unically is an interesting platform where you can wrap NFTs into like this ETF, I guess. And that's just like I don't know. This whole space just blows me away, and it's stuff that I really don't. Sometimes I just don't understand. And but man, you just go deeper and deeper. So Ferocious is a really cool artist, and they've got some really good stuff, and that's I'm always keeping an eye on that as well.
I love it. I'm a big NFT fan myself, so love talking about NFTs all the time. I'm wondering, you mentioned, a few things like community is something that has really drawn you into NFTs, even if you don't understand like the underlying value of a JPEG, or if you want to put it that way. What is your process for identifying NFT projects to invest in? Like, how did you find the Badass Bulls, and like, what was it that drew you in?
So, I mean, so specifically, the Badass Bulls was through the Trade the Chain community, which is which is a crypto trading community. Their proprietary tools are really useful for crypto trading. In particular, the sentiment tool, which follows crypto sentiment on social media. So their sentiment tools can really help traders identify just what the public is saying about a token, whether it's Bitcoin or StormX or I mean, they've got tons of cryptos that they follow. So that's an interesting tool, and I belong to that community. They're also a partner on my race car, and if nothing else, their Discord is worth the membership. You become a member of Trade the Chain, you can join their Discord, and they have really smart analysts, and that's where like I don't really trade crypto a lot, but I do buy it a lot, and I'm buying it on Voyager a lot. So I'm always going to the Trade Chain Discord, looking at the technical analysts, seeing what they're saying, and trying to kind of make my own assessments from there. So the Badass Bulls came from that, and I don't know if that was. Um, I don't know if there was a lot of technical analysis into that as much as it was the community was just like, oh, look at this awesome NFT. And we kind of dove into it. And then the Badass Bulls has a really cool Discord, and they're super active, and they're really active on Twitter. And, a bunch of us made it into our profile pictures for a while. I changed mine back, but, but we had it in our profile pictures for a while. And HQ Spider, which is a friend of mine from Barstool, is Dan Diorio. He got into Badass Bulls as well, and he's got like several of them and made it his profile picture. So, to answer the first part of your question, how do I assess these? To me, community is one of the biggest things, right? Like, okay, if there's a project that someone has reached out to me about, or something that I stumbled upon, I just start looking on their social media. I look for their Discord, I look for their Telegrams, and I try to figure out like what does their community look like? How active are they? How passionate are they? How organized are they? And then what's the use case around this token, right? For taking NFTs aside for a second and looking at a token like StormX or Voyager, you could look at the use case and say, okay, this is a rewards token for online shopping, or this is a rewards token for the Voyager platform. Well, the Voyager platform has 1.5 million accounts, right? They've got, I think they've got almost 1 million funded accounts, um, and they're growing at an exponential rate. So if this token is a use for paying interest on that platform, getting discounts on that platform, that's a token that's very interesting, right? So that's really, it's like the community and the use case of the tokens. Now with the NFT communities, I'm starting to see these communities form, like say Badass Bulls said, hey, anybody that is a token holder, if you connect your MetaMask wallet to this Discord, you get, special permissions, or these other, other sites, or other, I don't know, there's other places that you end up going, Telegram groups, where if you're a token holder, you get into it. Now you're part of an exclusive club. And so we're like, there's that potential that these NFT communities really start to branch beyond just the JPEG, right? Um, for me, I see an opportunity with my community, and I think there's something that I could do with that. My On the esports side of things, another race car driver and I, Parker Kligerman, we have a company called eRacer, and we put on big events on iRacing, which is the NASCAR endemic sim racing platform. We broadcast the events as really professionally. We have sponsors, we have racers, we have a Discord channel with a couple thousand people in it, right? So how cool would it be for us to maybe incorporate an NFT into that, or even a loyalty program into that, if enough of our members are also crypto users or could be crypto users? So I'm really interested in like that community aspect, and I think that that's one of the first things that I look at.
That is so cool. Have you thought about making like digital fashion, like having your racing jerseys or your racing uniforms as like digital NFTs that people can buy to race on the platform, and they could, be like, I'm Landon today, like, or I'm racing as Landon.
Yeah, so I mean, we've kind of thought about a lot of different things. The way that iRacing works, it's its own simulation, it's its own game, you could say. So we couldn't necessarily make a jersey or the maybe the more applicable way would be the paint scheme of the car, right? If there was a way that we could NFT the paint scheme of the car so that someone could buy it and then they own that paint scheme and they're the only ones that could use it on the platform, that would be a really cool use case. Now that would, we'd have to incorporate with iRacing to be able to do that. But I do think that even just as a community, we broadcast our events. Our drivers have names, they have headshots, they have, you know, um, we incorporate our drivers and their personalities into the broadcast package. So maybe there's some value in saying like, hey, this driver owns this little icon, and it's a checkered flag or it's a trophy, and he's the guy that owns that icon. So we put that next to his name all the time. Or this driver, she's interested in this, and she owns this NFT, and it signifies her status in the community or something like that. We could incorporate that into how those people promote themselves within our platform and on their other social media.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many, I mean, the options are endless right now. It's still in like such early days that you can really, like get creative with it and dream up all these things that don't even exist yet. And I do think like the more use cases we can come out like this, the more we'll be able to onboard, the quote unquote normies into crypto. And I think I see NFTs as being like the primary way to onboard the masses on a crypto, because that is just like the culture aspect of NFTs and like the community and the social aspect. Those are things that every human being can relate to, like aside from the financial aspects and things like that. So
Yeah, and to me, the easiest way to explain it to a lot of people is hey, we're already doing this, right? You already do it when it comes to cryptocurrency, right? Digital money, or non-fungible tokens. We already do this in a centralized way, right? Everybody knows what Starbucks rewards points are. Everybody knows what frequent flyer miles are. That's cryptocurrency, right? And and then as far as NFTs, like, we've, people have used um, what am I trying to say? Like digital gift cards or coupons or things like that. Like we're already sending those things to each other. So I think one of the challenges of the space is, okay, we can take a lot of these things that we're already doing, turn it into crypto, and use blockchain to make an application somewhere else. And so that's one way. But then the other thing too is, hey, maybe there's a lot of things that don't need to be on a blockchain, right? So we got to make sure that you don't overdo it that way. I mean, back in 2017, I think that we saw a lot of ICOs that didn't need to be ICOs, right? And that was probably part of the ICO bubble. Well, I'm sure that there's going to be loyalty tokens and NFT communities that like they didn't need to be tokenized or they didn't need to be on a blockchain. They could have just continued to operate the way that they did operate. So a little bit of the challenge is navigating like, hey, A, does this have a really smart use case? And then B, does it need to be on a blockchain? Does it need to have all this technology in it?
100%. And speaking of the ICO boom from back in 2017, a lot of people are comparing NFTs today to ICOs back in 2017. How do you view like the big NFT hype nowadays? Do you see this as like a boom, or do you see this as just the beginning and we're just going up from here? Like, how do you view the ecosystem that we're in today?
Well, to me, it's both, and a lot of it is kind of just what I said, right? So, back in the ICO boom, it's there was a couple of really good ones and they take off, and then it was really easy to duplicate, so there's a lot of companies that used it as startup capital, or people were just buying into these ICOs, and ultimately the bust of it all was, I think, realizing, well, a lot of these companies ICO that didn't need to be, it's like you're tokenizing things that don't have to be tokenized. And I would say that in terms of NFTs, it's probably going to see the same thing, right? There's going to be a lot of NFT projects that pop up and they're going to get a bunch of funding because people are making decisions so fast. But then when you peel back the layers, maybe you realize it's like, hey, if all this is a JPEG and the JPEG's not really worth anything and people lose interest in it, well, then that's where it can bust, right? But there's going to be a fraction of this boom, you could say, where these communities really do find good use cases for their projects, and they do find smart ways to harness the energy of their community and turn it into more than just the image that's attached to the secret keys, right? And that's where um, you know a community like Badass Bowls, or any one of these other NFT communities, um, you don't want to underestimate. You don't want to be too short sighted on what they can do with that fraternity, right? With that relationship of such a large group of people, and I think that if you think of the way that tech companies in the last couple decades have continued to surprise people on the amount of money they can make and what they can build just because they have a huge user base. That would be an interesting comparison, or that would be where I would say, hey, look at these companies that 20 years ago you couldn't have ever imagined that they would turn into what they are today, but they really did because they had a million users, right? And when you have that many users, you know the the you're basically unstoppable.
Yeah, love the shout out to Unstoppable. No, that's a really good point. I think the way that I see it is sort of like I think like the all the money in NFTs right now is just very condensed into like a few use cases, you know. So we're really seeing like art as the big use case, and then now with these profile pic avatars like the badass bulls, or you see the core cats, the apes, the punks, the penguins, all of these big ones out there. Like this is the main use case we're seeing right now. But I think the number of use cases that we could use NFTs for are, you know, just like 100x what we're seeing right now. And a lot of that we can't even imagine. It's like if you ask somebody to imagine Airbnb or Uber, you know, back in like the beginning days of the internet, it was impossible to imagine. And so I think we'll continue to see NFTs expand and grow, but probably just like instead of in this one vertical of art that we've seen so far, it'll probably branch out into different verticals, is sort of how I see it.
Easily, easily. I mean, that's like Amazon was a bookstore, at the start. They just, and that's the evolution of um, startup tech. I'm actually thinking of Peter Thiel's book right now, Zero to One, and where the lean startup would say, or the lean startup as well would say, uh, to find a niche, right, and dominate that niche. And in a lot of ways, the market is sort of doing that with NFTs, with art. It's like, well, what's the simplest thing we can do with this technology, right? Okay, well, let's attach a unique piece of artwork to it, and sort of, I guess the free market is proof of concepting that idea.
Yeah, exactly. So looking into the future, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like what do you see as the biggest barriers that are preventing mainstream adoption of crypto? Like if the end goal is mainstream adoption of crypto, what needs to change between now and then in order to reach our end goal?
Um, I mean, I just probably ease of use, and just simplicity, which we're really getting there. You take where we were at in terms of buying and selling crypto, Bitcoin 5 years ago, and I say 5 years ago because I feel like the last time we had a really mainstream push and a huge bull market and a price spike was 2017. And back then there weren't a lot of places you could go to buy crypto, and you definitely were very limited on your options in terms of buying crypto from your mobile device. There were options you could do uh, on your browser. The exchanges were kind of weird. The sign up process, you didn't really know where you were putting your money. um, there wasn't a lot of uh, regulation around it at the time. So KYC wasn't, I'm trying to think of when KYC was really became a thing. But now, Voyager is a platform you can sign up and be buying crypto in minutes, right? Just no different than your Robinhood account in buying stocks. So I think ease of use is a really important thing, and then for things like NFTs and using a MetaMask wallet on your smartphone, those are things that didn't exist right 5 years ago. So those are all sort of gonna just get us step by step closer to the most simplest version, to where my grandmother could use it, or maybe not even necessarily my grandmother, but like my friend who has a smartphone, but maybe he's not um, tech savvy necessarily. The ability for someone like that to not just buy Bitcoin, but also buy NFTs, and trade NFTs without losing their keys or sending it to the wrong address, or being intimidated by that. By being able to look at a market, and say, hey, my NFT, I should sell it, I should list it, I should bid on this one. Those are all kind of the interactions um, that you know every iteration that these platforms like OpenSea, and then on the crypto brokerage side, Voyager, every iteration that they have that makes that easier and more efficient for the simplest level will help with mainstream adoption.
Yeah, 100%. And I know this is like an impossible question, but I just like to ask everybody this. If you could just, time travel yourself 10 years into the future, where do you see crypto being there, like in terms of how people are interacting with it day to day? And I guess, like, to reframe this, like in your ideal world, if crypto progresses at the rate that like you believe it should, where do you hope to see crypto in 10 years?
I mean, I think 10 years from now in my fantasy land, Bitcoin is probably worth over $1 million. And I think that the crypto space, and this comes from seeing Voyager and knowing the 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 path that Voyager is headed and where Steve and his team are trying to go. I think that 10 years from now, crypto has absolutely challenged the legacy financial system and is holding them accountable for how they interact with their customers. And I think that the customers in the future, with because of crypto, will have more authority with their money and more ability um, to determine what their money is used for and how it returns value to them.
Yeah, 100%. And then what's in the future for you, like in terms of racing, in terms of crypto? Are you going to like work full time in crypto one day? Are you going to keep racing for another 10 years? Like, what are your plans?
I'm definitely racing in the future, and maybe 10 years from now, I'm not sure. I'll be 42. I could easily race into my 40s. A lot of drivers do it. I've always said that I think I want to be retired by the time I'm 40. But hopefully I'm winning a lot of races over the next couple of years, and hopefully I'm doing it with Voyager. We've got a lot of great things that we're working on together. So you never know what can happen there. But definitely in the near term future, I'm racing and involved in crypto. I would love to work for crypto companies, and I don't know what that would mean. Um, you know, it's I think that um, I think I just have a tremendous platform as a NASCAR driver, and as if I can continue doing that, then I'll be able to leverage that into involvement with crypto companies or just into the space and contribute to that community in whatever way I'm needed or could add value.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll be a shoe-in at like any crypto company that you want to work at after your racing career is done. So I wouldn't worry too much there.
For sure.
And then lastly, I like to wrap up every podcast episode with a segment called Explain Your Tweet. This is where I go through your Twitter account and I pull out some interesting or funny
Oh
or
no.
cryptic tweets and give you a chance to explain them. I've got a few random ones. The first one is actually relevant. So let's start with that. This is from July 31st, 2021. You said, I'm glad Twitter didn't exist when I was a teenager trying to make it in racing. This was a quote tweet for somebody that says, sometimes when I read heavy criticism towards drivers on this app, I forget that a majority of these drivers are just kids. Yeah, so like totally
That's a
I
good
think
one.
it's if you're going to be a public figure of any kind, whether a racer or a celebrity or anything, I think you have to brace yourself for a lot
Yeah.
of internet trolls. But I was wondering, like, in the racing community, how bad is it? Like, do you actually get hate messages and like how bad is it in the racing community?
I'm very fortunate. I haven't gotten a ton of hate online. I've had plenty of criticism. I have certain ways to handle it. I think for a lot of people that get a ton of hate, you it's a there's a different process for handling it. For me, I've gotten just enough that it's almost like a rule. If I all I have to do is respond back or have some sort of like smart, calculated thank you or whatever. They just like, oh man, big fan. I'm just kidding with you or something like that. But I mean, I haven't dealt with it at a scale, and I'm fortunate for that. Um, but the tweet though, that's a really good tweet that you brought up. Because I would like to explain that tweet. It was in reference to a crash that happened in another race, a race that I was not involved in. Two very young drivers, teenagers, and the crash was pretty, egregious. The way it was obvious that it was intentional, and so my comment I want at first wanted to comment on the crash and just be like, "That's horrible. That driver should have been parked." And then I ran myself through this like process of like, well, I don't really want to like put this kid on blast. I mean, even though what he just did was like not cool, it was dangerous. He should be parked for it. Like I had my opinions on the crash, but then I was like, well, that could have been me when I was 16 on either side of it. And then it was just like I was looking at all the messages and people were saying the meanest things and then debating and I'm just like I was like, wow, I'm just glad that that Twitter didn't exist when I was in that kid's position, because I could have been that kid. I could have wrecked someone on purpose for the dumbest reason, and gotten put on blast for it publicly. I could have gone out and said something stupid on social media that is totally regrettable, but because you're 16, you get out of the car and you just crashed a guy, so you say something that you didn't mean about him or whatever. I just was like, all of that was kind of coming to a head, and that's why I tweeted that. It was just like, you know what? I'm just glad social media didn't exist when I was 16, because when I was 16, I was just able to focus on racing, and that's what I did. But I'm glad that like at a young age I did, I was on the internet a lot. I always kind of call myself a child of the internet, and and I knew that the internet is forever. Um, but I definitely don't envy being 16 years old or 15 years old and trying to succeed at a sport or trying to succeed at something, which requires making yourself a public figure. I mean, these kids are on social media because they want to be, but also their sponsors want them to be, and their teams need them, in the limelight. So then you just open yourself up to a lot of criticism, and then, like I said, because you're a teenager, you're also susceptible to say dumb things, and
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, because we're around the same age, I think about, I'm just glad Instagram didn't exist when we were in middle school and high school, because I just imagine, like all the bullying that you already deal with in middle school, high school, and then, these like young girls that already have all of these like body image issues and all these issues, and then on top of that, you've got the whole world commenting on that publicly, it's just gotta like, that it's props to any teenage girl nowadays who's able to like just stay totally confident in who they are, and because it's not easy being out there in social media.
yeah, young kids definitely have some serious challenges that we dealt with in other ways, but they deal with it in the digital world, and the challenge ultimately to me is in the digital world, things are scalable, by 1,000, right? So even, girls had body image issue challenges when we were in high school, but it wasn't scalable to the million people, right? It was scalable to your community, to your school, but now, I mean, gosh, when kids have 10,000 followers on Instagram, um, which high schoolers do, right? Like kids are popular in their towns and in their cities. I don't envy that at all. And I've got kids, so I'm a parent, so I don't know how I'm going to deal with that in the next 10, 15 years.
Good luck. Good luck. You'll figure something out. And then, real quick, I've got another tweet. This one is totally random. This is from July 23rd, 2021. You said, I go to the beach once a year. Every year I have to buy flip flops because that's the only time I wear them in 365 days. That's a flip flop policy you all should consider. What a lot of questions here. Well, like, what's going on here? Why do you go to the beach once a year? Why can't you like keep your flip flops, or why do you refuse to wear flip flops when you're not at the beach? And like, why can't you just keep the same pair year over year?
That line of questioning you just asked is literally sounded like my wife had asked me when I put out that tweet, and she gave me a hard time about buying flip flops. So a little exaggeration. I think I do go to the beach maybe more than once a year because we race in Daytona and we always make it out to the beach. But we have a family vacation with my in-laws to the beach once a year. So that was my once a year. That was my comment about going to the beach once a year. And not a big flip flop guy. You're not going to see me wearing flip flops anywhere other than the beach on family vacation. And I don't buy fancy flip flops. So about the $20 that I spend at whatever surf shop or whatever the first place we go to buy my flip flops for the week, and then I wear them walking back and forth from the beach, and then we're done. I throw them away, and I don't need flip flops again for the rest of the year. Not a big flip flop guy.
You just don't like how it feels on your feet, or do you have some like philosophical like dilemma with flip flops, or what's going on there?
I just, to me, the function only the function for flip flops is only for walking to and from the beach. Like you can rinse them off easily. They're not going to get all dirty with your shoes. And other than that, they suck to walk in. They're uncomfortable. So why would you wear flip flops for any reason other than walking out the door to make sure you don't burn your feet on the asphalt walking across the street and then into the hot sand? Like they work great for that one thing and nothing else. Just prove me wrong, somebody.
Okay, cool. I'll accept that. I'll stop grilling you about flip flops. I accept your answer. All right. Well, before you go, Landon, tell people where they can find you if they want to connect with you personally, and then feel free to plug away at anything you'd like to. Voyager, the esports stuff you're working on, Badass Bowls, anything you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So I'm on Twitter, at Landon Cassill, and Instagram. You can pretty much, if you go on any social media and type in Landon Cassill, you'll probably find me. And yeah, but I spend most of my time on Twitter because I'm really interactive, and I like talking to fans. My DMs are open. I get a lot of interesting DMs, especially now that I'm in the crypto space, like publicly. So I get a lot of interesting DMs, and then I'm also on Discord as well, and enjoy my community on Discord, the E-Racer community, which is my esports company. Parker Kligerman and I, he's also a NASCAR driver. We put on these events, and we have a great community there. Um, and I'm always up to something with Voyager. They're a great platform for buying and selling crypto. So if you need a place to do that, or if you want to hold your crypto on there and earn some interest, that's a great one. Maybe send me a tweet and I'll get you a promo code or something like that. On Voyager, they do a really cool promo code um, for myself and anybody really on the platform. If you share your link, and somebody signs up, funds their account with $100 and makes a trade, both parties gets another $25 in Bitcoin, which is pretty cool. So it's a good way to get an entry into crypto if you're not familiar.
Sweet. I'm going to DM you right after this for your promo code for Voyager and sign up
Awesome.
and get both of us some free monies. I love it.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Landon, to come on the podcast. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in as always. And we'll be back again soon with another episode of the Unstoppable Podcast.